There's been a lot of talk about record numbers of people leaving the UK in the last year, especially young people and millionaires. There are countless article headlines, news stories and videos about leaving broken Britain. Now, I don't know about you, but I just can't hear the term broken Britain anymore. It's become a kind of national refrain, a phrase once deployed by the Conservative Party in 2007 just to score political points is now echoed all over the internet. It's almost like there's this digital desperation to try and see who can bash Britain the hardest. What started as a political slogan has become a kind of diagnosis, and in that diagnosis, many people seem to draw the conclusion that everyone, not even everyone, is leaving, everyone is escaping. But the reality is actually very different. Britain is not witnessing a mass exodus in any way, shape or form. Somehow the media has taken opinion polls and future projections as evidence that people have left. And I find this topic really interesting because I myself am someone who has actually left. The truth is that roughly 0.1% of British citizens emigrate each year, a figure that's barely budged in 2 decades. Now, according to data from the Office of National Statistics ending December 2024, total long-term emigration from the UK was around 517,000, which was up 11% from 466,000 in the previous year. However, of these, just 77,000 were British nationals, meaning 85% of emigrants are foreign nationals, mostly returning home after finishing work or study, meaning that they were never planning to stay permanently in the first place. And the headlines that you may have seen about an exodus of millionaires from the UK also is completely fabricated. Like, apparently 9,500 millionaires left the UK in 2024, which is roughly 0.3% of the UK's millionaire population, which is actually statistically consistent with immobility, not mass departure. And this figure of 9,500 was based on a report by Henley and Partners, which is a firm that sells golden passports to the super rich and advises governments on setting up such schemes. So it's obviously in their interest to exaggerate and dramatize this situation. So what is really going on? Why do so many young people say they're leaving when so few actually are? Well, it's an emotional topic, and the sentiment, at least online, is divisively negative regarding Britain right now. It's almost like I said before, like there's literally a competition to see who can bash Britain the hardest. There's even a growing cohort of people now that have a problem with the term the UK now. Just look up the UKification of Britain. And there's also quite a few people that don't like the term Britain and have a problem or claim that British identity does not exist. And so when you really go down the rabbit hole, the identity rabbit hole of this piece of land off the coast of the European continent, it becomes really difficult to know what to call this place without offending a large portion of society. But look, it's not inconsequential. It is not unimportant that there is so much confusion over terminology and identity here. Every country has its problems, but as this video represents, which I'll link up here, that I did on why the British think they're not part of Europe, basically that video represents that the UK or Great Britain, whatever you want to call it, is going through a massive identity crisis and has been for some time. And this is partly where this malaise of digital doom and gloom is coming from. But we must not make the mistake of confusing complaints and apathy with actual movements. When a post about getting out of Britain goes viral, it can really feel like everyone's packing their bags. And when 72% of young Brits tell the British Council they'd consider working abroad, it can sound like, maybe they've left. But considering, thinking about, wanting to is not the same as actually leaving. But as you may have noticed, in this current age, feelings and emotions are getting more and more traction, are becoming more and more important. And speaking of feelings and emotions, CyberGhost, who are kindly sponsoring this video, care deeply about your digital freedom. With over 38 million users and 15 plus years of experience, CyberGhost VPN is one of the most trusted names in online privacy and security. They've got more than 11,000 1,000 servers across 100 countries, so wherever you are, you're covered with a fast, secure, and stable connection. CyberGhost hides your IP address, encrypts your data, and reroutes all your traffic through a secure VPN tunnel, meaning your online activity stays hidden from prying eyes. And yes, it's super easy to use, no tech background needed, whether you're on Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, smart TVs, gaming consoles, or Linux, you're protected. Plus, and this is a big one, it unblocks over 35 major streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and BBC iPlayer, so you never miss your favorite shows when traveling. One subscription protects up to 7 devices at once, which means you can keep your whole household covered. By using my link, you'll get 83% off CyberGhost VPN. That's only €2.03 per month, plus 4 extra months for free. So click the link in the description below to claim the offer and take back your digital freedom. Now, I totally relate to this sentiment of wanting to get out and see if the grass is greener, because I was in that place in my early 20s, and so I left. I left Britain for good in 2008. I went to China and was there for 2 years before moving to Germany. And you may have forgotten, but in the aftermath of the Iraq War, during the Blair-Brown years, you could hear the exact same complaints that you're hearing today up and down the country throughout the early 2000s, and then of course in 2008 with the financial crash. Young people were really struggling then, as they are now. And I had the feeling that everyone was leaving because, well, I joined a program run by the British Council and many people that I knew personally were leaving. And yet throughout the early 2000s, just 0.06% to 0.1% of the UK's population emigrated each year. And so there have been no drastic shifts of British people leaving in droves. It's just not true. So why does this narrative persist? And maybe more importantly, who does it serve? Because the story is useful. It's useful for individuals, for institutions, and also very useful for the algorithms that profit from spectacle. And so for individuals, and really I can speak here from personal experience, because this is exactly how I felt when I left, especially the young and the disillusioned. The fantasy of escape is a coping mechanism. If nothing is working where you are, you really try to cling on to sort of an imagined future, a fantasy that if you go over there, everything's going to be better. And it really offers an imagined exit from this reality that feels increasingly claustrophobic in an environment where housing is out of reach, where career paths are extremely uncertain, and politicians just don't get it. It is so tempting to revert to the fantasy of the grass is greener. And in this context, saying, I want to leave, or I'm gonna leave, I have to. This isn't like just sort of some ambitious, aspirational goal. It's a form of protest. It's a way of saying, I don't belong in this version of Britain. I do not agree with it, and I want to wash my hands of this mess. And again, I could say that these are just feelings, and that they don't reflect reality. But if enough people believe something to be true, then it kind of is true. Like, it definitely affects and influences reality, at least when we're talking about culture and society. Now, for media and political actors, the exodus narrative plays another role. It dramatizes discontent without addressing its causes. And so it's easier to amplify stories of brain drain or fleeing youth than to confront the systems that actually make people want to leave in the first place. Like, it lets governments off the hook and blames global trends, or instead of asking, why nurses seem to need food banks and why teachers are quitting in droves. And then of course there's the digital machinery, like social media rewards emotion, not evidence. And the more dramatic the story, the more engagement it gets. So everyone is leaving performs far better than emigration rates are stable. It fits the doom cycle. It validates our cynicism, and it just makes us feel like we're not alone in our discontent, even if it's not actually true. And that matters, because when the dominant story becomes Britain is broken and everyone wants out, we stop asking, the actual difficult questions which could lead to improvements. Like, what are the actual structural problems? What needs to change? What's worth staying for? And what kind of future are we capable of building here in the UK or elsewhere? And so when we engage with the deeper underlying causes, we refuse to let despair become our only compass. And so the real problem I have with this narrative is that most young Brits have not left the country physically. Like that's the real crux of the matter. Like they are still there physically, but if opinion polls and online discourse is to be believed, they seem to have left it psychologically, like they've just left in spirit. A 2024 poll from More in Common found that 50% of Britons say they sometimes feel like strangers in their own country. And that figure rises to 66% among 18 to 24-year-olds. And in another survey, just 41% of Gen Z said they feel proud to be British. So the disillusionment runs deeper than policy failures or party lines. It's a sense of emotional detachment from any clear future they can believe in. They seem to be unplugging from the national story, and it seems that they may not just be quiet quitting work, but the country and culture in general. And so this is what makes the Exodus narrative so tempting, but in its inaccuracy, it is actually papering over the real tragedy. A problem far greater than people leaving is people staying who don't want to actually be there, like people who've lost trust, lost hope, lost emotional investment, who've essentially given up and checked out. Like it's very easy to see this in the context of a company. Like if you have employees who are just like who've checked out, it will ruin the company. And I don't think it's any different when it comes to a country. And so when you stop identifying with a place, when you no longer see your reflection in its institutions, in its culture or imagined future, what reason is there to stay, even if you never actually leave? Moving abroad to a foreign country is amazing. It just comes with so many benefits and challenges, of course. If you're using money as an excuse, that is not valid. If you're in your 20s or 30s, you do not need money to move abroad. You don't have to have a business. You don't need to be a digital nomad. I did manual labor for a year, so just do what you've got to do. If you're from the UK, there are hundreds, thousands of programs that you can join, but moving abroad is not a magical solution. It is hard, especially like on a personal level, it's lonely. You will doubt yourself. There's a lot of like self-worth issues that come up. And so I know that most people will never do it. But one of the byproducts of attempting to leave, even if you end up going back, is that it really makes you appreciate your own country that much more. Often by going to another place, you begin to see things very differently and your perspective will shift. And you might actually realize that there are just so many amazing things about this country. The people, the culture, the countryside, the history and the heritage. And you just can't see that if you're deep in the depths of despair. And so I suppose the purpose of this video is to reassure you that the number of people leaving Britain has not increased in the last 20 years. There is no exodus of the young, there is no exodus of the talented, of the highly skilled, or the rich. And so if you're not ready to take the leap and move abroad, then that's fine, make peace with it, it's okay, you don't need to leave. Just find your people, build something small and real, contribute to a scene or a subculture or a project, because culture isn't a given. Like culture, it doesn't just exist, it has to be built. And if the mainstream story no longer reflects you, then it's your job to rewrite a new one. The most subversive act in a system that you feel is collapsing isn't to escape, it is to create an alternative path, to plant roots and to choose optimism in a supposedly doomed world. So thank you so much for watching. If you value privacy and security online, then do check out CyberGhost and take advantage of the discount that they are offering. This application will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all blog content on the internet for just €2.03 a month. Thanks for watching, and whatever path you choose, choose it fully.